Hello and welcome to Anderson Community Television. I'm Carol Donahue, your host today of At Your Service. And we have a new guest today, I think new to the program, and very interesting, Dr. Philip Baldoff, who's going to be talking to us about ALB. So Dr. Baldoff, why don't you tell us, what is ALB?
ALB is an acronym. It stands for Asian longhorned beetle. ALB is an invasive beetle, meaning it didn't come from, it's not from here. It came from Asia. And there are infestations in a few different pockets in the United States. One of those infestations is in Claremont County.
I see. Well, tell us, you're not an employee of Anderson Township, but you're more or less in a cooperative venture, correct?
Certainly. I work for the United States Department of Agriculture.
Okay.
And the eradication program is a cooperative venture between the USDA as well as the Ohio Department of Agriculture. And we work cooperatively to eradicate the Asian longhorn beetle.
Now, when was that first detected in our area here? I know we've all heard of the other infestation, which was a headache to everyone.
Yeah.
Emerald ash borer.
Emerald ash borer has been here for a few years. The Asian longhorn beetle infestation was first detected in the summer of 2011 in Claremont County. And very soon after that detection, an eradication program was mapped out, and staff were recruited to fill those responsibilities and begin an expansive survey effort to detect the infested trees, as well as a removal effort to remove those infested trees so that they can't be left to perpetuate the infestation.
Are they particular about what type of tree they go to, or is it an even playing field?
They have what would generally be considered a wide host range. There are 13 different types of trees that Asian longhorn beetle can complete its life cycle on. The preferred trees, at least here in Ohio, are maple, buckeye, elm, willow, and poplars, and birch.
What would be the sign that you might have a problem?
That's a great question, and that's one of the most important things that we want to have your viewers understand, so that they can join forces with us and go and look for signs of Asian longhorn beetle. And in fact, I brought a demonstration piece to show your viewers. So this is a piece of maple that has been attacked by the Asian longhorn beetle. And I'm going to kind of walk you through the life cycle of the Asian longhorn beetle. Actually, let me turn it around as I explain it. So during the warmer months, during the summer months, adult Asian longhorn beetles emerge out of infested wood. They mate, and then the female will lay eggs in the bark of host trees. And this here, this here, those are what we call oviposition sites or egg sites. The female beetle uses her mandibles to excavate holes, and then she'll deposit an egg in each one of those holes. A larva will hatch out of those eggs and then begin to tunnel underneath the bark and form what we call galleries. And then as the larva ages and develops, it will eventually turn inward towards the heartwood of the tree and form these internal galleries. It's basically eating its way through the tree, and then will eventually emerge out of an exit hole. the adult beetle will emerge out of an exit hole. So these ribbons here kind of connect the egg site, which in the case of this candy cane ribbon, the egg site is in here, and then you can kind of trace the path that larva took as it matured. Came through here, up into here, and then out this exit hole.
Could you guesstimate how long that would take for a tree to be attacked to really show serious signs? Is that a matter of 6 months or 5 years? Or?
So the life cycle, at least in warmer climates, typically takes about a year. Okay. So if an egg is laid during the summer months, a larva will mature over the winter, and then an adult would emerge the next summer, the following summer.
I see.
And I have another display piece that I want to show and talk more about that life cycle.
All right.
And you can also see the beetle in this display. So here are our two adults. One's a female and one's a male. And you only can see adult beetles during the summer months. The adult beetles will be killed off with the first frost, and then you don't see adult beetles. The larvae are what are left to perpetuate the infestation, but you don't see them. You know, they're inside the trees for the winter months. That's how they overwinter. So let me walk you through that same step with this display piece, because I think it shows a little bit more. So here again is an oviposition site and an egg. Here's a picture of an egg on that black card. It's about the size of a grain of rice.
I see.
A larva will emerge out of the egg and continue to feed underneath the bark. And as the larva grows, it gets bigger, and then will pupate, which is what happens when it changes from a larva to an adult. And then the adult emerges in the following summer. And you can see these exit holes in this piece of wood here.
My goodness. So this bug originated in Asia, came across the ocean probably on a cargo ship or on an airplane, or?
Yes. So with the rise of international commerce, international shipping, there's wood packaging material often used. And if there was an infested tree in Asia that happened to be used to make a pallet or some other type of wood packaging material, and that wasn't treated, that once the pallet arrived in the United States, the goods are offloaded, the pallet gets discarded out back. I often see stacks of pallets discarded out back of a factory or a shop. Then the larvae can still complete their life cycle. Adults emerge and find a nearby suitable host tree and start a new infestation. And we believe that's how the infestation in Claremont County began as well.
Didn't that basically start like around Tate Township?
Yes.
Like in the Bethel area?
Yes. So just to the west of Bethel is the heart of our infestation in Claremont County. The infestation was first detected in 2011, and I have a map here that shows our quarantine area, and the entire quarantine surrounds all of Tate Township, portions of the East Fork Wildlife Area, as well as all of East Fork State Park. There are also 2 satellite quarantines in Monroe Township, as well as one that spans the border of Stone Lick and Batavia townships. Those 2 satellite quarantines are interesting and tell an important message for us in that they were both directly attributed to the movement of infested firewood. So the property owners in these 2 satellite quarantines, they had acquaintances in Tate Township, where the infestation was first started. And this was back in 2010, before we knew about the infestation and before there were quarantine in place. So they weren't breaking any laws when they were doing this. But the people in Tate Township said, hey, I know you burn firewood. I have this sick-looking tree on my property. If you come and cut it down, the wood's yours. And these folks out in these satellite quarantines say, okay, that sounds like a good deal.
Yeah.
The trees were most likely sick because of the Asian longhorn beetle infestation, but they weren't aware. So that's what happened. And then, as you can imagine, sometimes you don't burn all the wood that you have in one winter. So the firewood is left the following spring for adult beetles to emerge from and start a new infestation. One of our main emphasis of our regulatory program is to prevent the artificial spread of Asian longhorn beetle through mechanisms like firewood. And in fact, it's illegal to move firewood outside of these quarantine areas.
So if somebody right now has a stockpile of firewood, they should not move it. Should they have somebody come and check it out, or?
So we will come and evaluate firewood and do so frequently.
Okay.
A lot of that is done within the quarantine. Outside the quarantine, we will do that as well. If anybody has any suspicions of Asian longhorn beetle infestation, we have a website. It's www.asianlonghornbeetle.com, and there's a reporting tool on that website where they can explain the damage that they're seeing, where it is, upload pictures, digital pictures of that damage, and those come right to my inbox.
So you can observe it right in the comfort of your own office.
Yeah, and depending on the report, we will dispatch some of our staff to go in and evaluate it closer.
Now, if you make a visit to someone's home and you suspect it and it turns out that's what it is, then your agency goes in and does the removal?
I would suspect that our program would expand to wherever the Asian longhorn beetle infestation is. And there's a number of steps that we would go through. Probably one of the first steps is after an infestation is confirmed, we would establish another quarantine, and then go and remove those infested trees so that larvae couldn't continue to emerge from those trees and spread further.
I see.
There would also be a robust survey effort in the general vicinity to delimit the infestation, to know how far it spread since you brought that firewood there, or whatever caused the infestation.
Of course, I think people are going to be more aware of it as the weather gets a little warmer, as we head towards spring. Now in the winter, there's probably not as much activity, correct?
So, well, there's quite a bit of firewood type movement over the winter, as people are trying to heat their homes. So our program is quite active. And to be honest, during the winter months, it's often easier to see the signs of Asian longhorn beetle. Let me bring back up this display piece. These egg sites can be difficult to see when they're shaded because of the leaf canopy
I never thought
in
of
the
that.
summer months. And so in the winter months, when the leaves are off, you don't have to deal with that shading problem. But in addition to that, the leaves themselves aren't in the way, so you can get a better view of the trees and any of the holes that may be in those trees, and get an idea if it might be Asian longhorn beetle. There are some other signs that we look for, and these can be visible all year round. One of which is what we call frass. Frass is the excrement of the larva. So as the larva is eating through the tree, it's displacing a lot of material, and that frass material gets pushed out the holes in the tree. And you can, when I picked this up earlier, there was a pile of frass on my leg. I brushed it off.
Like sawdust.
But yeah, you can see it still in here, inside that, packed in the galleries. That's frass, and frass will collect in crotches of trees, or at the base of the tree, and in heavy infestations, I've seen it actually kind of raining down out of the tops of the trees. So those are the things that folks can look for when they're out inspecting the trees. We survey all year round, but like I mentioned, the best time to survey is probably in the winter.
But you say you're surveying, but you're then basically surveying just around the infected areas.
Well, we focus our survey efforts around the within the quarantine area. We know there's already an active infestation there, which can spread naturally. You know, the beetles can fly, the adult beetles can fly, and so they'll spread by themselves. So it's likely that there's a higher probability that neighboring trees will also be infested. So we do focus the bulk of our survey efforts within the quarantine. But like I mentioned, if somebody calls and reports some suspicious damage, we definitely will respond and do some survey work there to determine if it actually is Asian longhorn beetle or not. And let me also say that I would much rather respond to a negative report, a report that ends up to not be Asian longhorn beetle, than somebody who's not sure, doesn't want to call, doesn't want to bother anybody, and have that end up being Asian longhorn beetle. It's better to be proactive than reactive.
Is the process different in the wooded, rural areas as opposed to maybe a little town setting?
Well, not really. It's really the same. We'd go through the same steps. In a wooded setting, it might be a little more difficult, just because there's a lot more host material, a lot more trees that could be infested. And we might be impacting a certain property owner more heavily because they have a larger property and more trees. So if they have a large property, we might remove over 100 trees on one property versus a small in-town property that has a few trees. There wouldn't be a proportional impact.
So if you unfortunately have to deliver the bad news that there is an infestation, does that necessarily mean that tree has to come down, or can you put some kind of insecticides in there to try and save the tree?
So that's a good question, and there are some pesticide applications that can be used in an eradication program. Those pesticides are thought of as a preventative treatment and not a cure. Any tree that is infested with Asian longhorn beetle will be removed, and then in order to kill the larva that would be in the tree, we would chip that material, which prevents the completion of its life cycle.
So do you work closely with arborists?
We have several arborists on our staff. And they provide a bulk of the consultation that we would need along those lines.
And
but let me finish. Sorry to interrupt. we have an extensive outreach campaign. So and we train arborists what to look for, because they're out in the trees, they're out in the woods, they're looking, and they can often be the first line to areas where we might not be focusing our survey efforts. And once they become aware of Asian longhorn beetle and the signs of Asian longhorn beetle, they can know what to look for too, and report it just as well as a property owner could.
Are the evergreen trees more hardy as far as these infestations?
Evergreens aren't infested by Asian longhorn beetle. So I'm aware of some experimentation that's been done where they've been challenged, and the beetle doesn't prefer it.
Well, good. Well, tell us what you're interested. How did you become interested in this line of work? Tell us a little bit about your background.
Okay. I grew up in the Northeast, in upstate New York, in a farming community. And my dad was a farmer growing up, had a huge garden, made his own bookshelves and furniture out of the wood material on the property. So I've always felt close to the land, and when trying to determine what area of study I was interested in college, I leaned towards agricultural areas, and eventually determined or picked plant pathology, which is what my degree's in. And the agency that I work for is the Animal Plant Health Inspection Service, and we work to safeguard American agriculture, and that's against insect pests as well as plant diseases. And my first job with the United States Department of Agriculture was on a program to control a nematode, which is a microscopic worm that infested potato plants in Idaho. And that transitioned to another job, which eventually led me here to Ohio to eradicate the Asian longhorn beetle.
We're glad you're here.
Well, thank you. I'm glad to be here. It's been a great time for me and my family. Cincinnati is a beautiful area, and with that said, I do appreciate the difficult situation that we do put property owners in when we knock on their door and say, we're here to cut down your trees. And we acknowledge the sacrifice that these property owners give when they lose their trees to the Asian longhorn beetle. But it's important to understand that if that sacrifice wasn't made, then all the neighboring communities would be impacted just as well. So yeah, it's a great place to be, tempered by the fact that I'm here to sometimes ruin people's day.
Well, we are going to put the website on the screen, and if anybody has any questions, may we put your email address?
Certainly. We can also put our program phone number, and give us a call, or like I explained earlier, submit a report through the AsianLonghornBeetle.com website.
So if there's just one bit of advice to offer our viewers today, what would that be?
It would be to learn the signs of Asian longhorn beetle and go and check your trees. Another main point would be to not move firewood, because that could potentially spread invasive pests.
Well, I thank you very much. We thank Dr. Philip Baldoff for joining us today and for really spreading this wisdom, because there's so much to learn about this to safeguard our valuable trees and our property. Thank you for joining us today. And thank all of you for watching Anderson Community Television. This is Carol Donahue saying farewell until next time.